John chapter 15. Maybe it'll help you to read along. Maybe it'll do better to close your eyes again. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim. You know how true that actually is? Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of children because it got bare in here when that happened. But you know how real that is. That's why I am not spending another year anxiously talking about the earth and everything going on. We can, but under the presence with eyes turned upon Jesus and let him guide, because there's truth in that. And the reason I can say that, too, is because of some of his words. Last week, we read through some of his final words to his disciples after he spent time with them in the upper room, after he had what I think is one of the most amazing acts of servant leadership in showing what life in his kingdom is like, as he humbled himself and washed the disgusting feet of his disciples. Again, sometimes we read this so much we don't realize how amazing that is. Some of us here don't like feet now and washing feet. And our feet are clean compared to theirs and what it was. And the God of the universe, like it says in Philippians 2, didn't consider himself equal with God, but humbled himself, became obedient and a servant. And in this case, washed their feet. And afterwards, he was talking to them, sharing with them the realities of the world. But in the midst of it, he shared these words in John 15, chapter 1. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. So remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. And then he says, I have told you this, so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. Remain in me, he said. Remain in me. Remain in me. Very important to Jesus that we remain in him. And he says, and when you do, you will bear much fruit. He doesn't say, depending on circumstances or depending on how your day went or depending on whatever, he says, remain in me and you will bear much fruit. If you don't, you won't. In other words, in kind of the terms that we've been using, if you are in alignment with me, it can lead to some amazing things as you live out the breath of life that you've been given. But if you're misaligned, out of alignment, it's going to be a struggle. It's just the way it works. And when we realize that we're in that place and that we're not okay, then we can go back and realize, when it's not all good, we can take that to him. We can put that in front of him, and then we can find out in the words of Torrin Wells, a songwriter, just how good God is. When we realize, he said, that it's not all good, that's when we realize how good God is. So Jesus says, remain in me, remain in me, remain in me. But if we're not, know that we can go to him, come back to him, and find out how good that he actually is. In order to experience this, we've been looking, at just seeing the truth in that. We've been looking at ourselves. We've been looking at how we can actually truly experience the freedom from guilt and shame and self-condemnation that leads to nothing good. When we live from that, nothing good comes out of it. But when we experience his love and his forgiveness and the freedom that's offered in Christ, then we get to experience the life that he has for us that we can when we remain in him. So we've been doing this series, encouraging ourselves to look at ourselves, and as we shared last week, to wake up to ourselves and do the hard, scary work of knowing ourselves so that we can know wisdom and then ultimately know God. And in that knowing and in that truth, we'll be able to see again that in the beginning it was God who used his words to make heaven and earth. And in the process of that, actually ended up saying, then let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and all the livestock and all the wild animals and over all the creatures that move along the ground. He said, let's do that. And then God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, and then he saw everything he made, and he said, that's very good. We just keep coming back to this over and over and over again because we just have to. Because every day there's an enemy that wants us to forget the solid foundation that we can live within, to live out who God created us to be so we can experience what God has for us while we remain in Jesus. These words are beautiful that David penned years later that we love to look at in the Psalms. But if we're really honest, more often than not, we struggle with believing it and living by it. David said, you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb, and I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made, because your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. There's some beautiful things that have been created. Some people that get to travel the world get to see some architecture and things that have been put together. There's some beautiful pieces of furniture. There's some beautiful buildings. There's just all kinds of stuff that's nothing compared to what God created in our mother's wombs that you are a part of. Like I said, this is a comforting thing to hear, but man, we struggle to live in this. So we're going to talk about a little bit. We're going to dig in a little bit at some of who he created again today, and we're coming towards the end of this. And I will tell you this, next week, like I said, we won't be gathering. The following week, we'll do one of the last two, and then the very last one, probably just going to record. And if you want to watch it, you can, because if everything goes as planned, it'll be 3 weeks that I won't be here speaking. I'll be gone 1 week in Indiana at my brother's church. Get the privilege of getting to go and share there. He actually wanted me to come introduce this I did there. The following week, Lan and I are hoping to be on a getaway together, and then the week after that, we'll be back. But Todd Brashler will be here speaking with us. Many of the men know who he is, and be a special time with him coming and sharing with us. So I didn't want to go to the 8th one and then wait a month to hear the last one, then kick in, and we're going to be ready to move on. So the very last one, I'm just planning on just recording, posting, and you can watch on these different types of images that God has created him, the different personalities, because God did not create everybody the same. That's the other thing we need to understand, that we've just got to get in our heads. They are not going to believe the same way. They're not going to have the same opinions. They're not going to go the same route. They're not going to, it's not going to happen. And as we continue to try and navigate through this crazy time together, if we do not understand that we are going to constantly be frustrated, because since I'm always right, they're always going to be wrong. And then we're going to have a really hard time loving each other. On the flip side, I'm not one of those that just goes, well, everybody's just, whatever. We got to have hard conversations and try and find truth in some things. But if we don't understand that everybody sees the world through different colored glasses, different experiences, different backgrounds, and we're going to have a hard time getting to that place. That's why Jesus said grace and truth. We just want to share and find truth, but grace is what leads there. But it's when we begin to understand that we are not all the same. And for those that haven't been with us, we've been using this tool called the Enneagram to help look at some different personality types that God created so that we can possibly understand ourselves a little bit better, understand each other a little bit better, and why they do the way that they're looking out there so that hopefully we really can love God and our neighbor and ourselves better. That is the end goal. Not just to get information, because as I shared before, information without application does not lead to transformation. All that does is lead to self-deception and more knowledge. But when we can look at this and see how God created us and the part of His image that He put in each of us and put in the other, then we can learn to truly love ourselves, our neighbor, and Him as we reflect Him, and be salt and light on here. So today the one I want to talk about is the one that is actually one that we like to have around a lot of times. In fact, I was thinking this week, this is kind of fun to look into a little bit more and to talk about because they are just fun. And to share it, I want to share, there's a book called The Road Back to You by a guy named Ian Cron, and he shares in his book about a trip that he makes with his son to a Whole Food grocery store. And if you read it in there, he already has a problem with going Whole Food grocery store stuff. He said his wife was real big on that, on their kids, eating really well their whole life. So he would sneak bags of Cheetos in his kids' lunches for years because they need to have a real life too. And he doesn't understand why you're going to go buy food without grain or protein or anything else. And he's a funny guy writing all that. But he says they go to this Whole Food place, and if you've been to one, a lot of times they look really nice when you walk into them. And he shares that when they walked into this Whole Food restaurant, there was this beautiful display of apples right at the front door, right as you walked in. Because you would have thought they literally hired an architect just to build the display of apples that were there. And his little son, Aiden, I don't remember if he says how old he was when he was in there, when they went in there at the time. First thing he saw was those apples and started running towards it. And his dad yells out to him, "Do not touch the apples." No. They looked so beautiful. They were crisp. All the different kinds they have there. And so he said he yelled it loud enough that it actually startled his son, Aiden, and he actually jumped back a little bit nervous, about these apples. But he's a little guy, and so Ian talks about how he goes through and he starts looking for whatever kind of food it was that he was trying. I think he said it was almond milk that he was looking for. And he goes, probably not even 5 seconds, he hears this muffled thump. And he said it was like a softball or a tennis ball landing on the roof of a canvas camping tent. And all of a sudden, he heard a few more, and a few more, and a few more, and then he could hear the collective gasp of all the customers, and then the roar of what is referred to in his family now as the Avalanche of 2006. And he turned, and he whipped around, and he says, "I found my son Aiden on all fours, desperately grabbing at rolling fruit as if he thought he had time to collect and restack them before I discovered the nature of his evil," as he writes it. Like he was doing that. He says, "Aiden looked terror-stricken when he saw me walking toward him wearing my sinners in the hands of an angry God face. But then, as if arrested by a brilliant last-minute idea to stay his execution, it says his son Aiden grinned, leaped to his feet, and began dancing." Can you just picture being there as a customer, watching this take place? He says, "When I say dancing, I mean James Brown live at the Apollo Theater in 1962 dancing. Now, brought up short, I watched as he segued into the famous John Travolta peace sign across the eyes from the movie Pulp Fiction. What went through his head at that point, well, I guess this tells you, is where does an 8-year-old learn such things? But he said 2, Few things are going to dissolve a father's fury quite like the sight of a giggling little boy wearing a Life is Good t-shirt dancing in front of apples. It says, I tried, Lord knows I tried to muffle myself and prevent myself from laughing with everyone else in the aisle, but I could not hold myself back when he thrust out his little butt and moved into doing the twist. How do you reprimand a little kid like that? For the umpteenth time, my son Aiden had managed to turn a crime into a comedy. Now, if you're the first person we talked about today, the first type, you're going, I can tell you how you still reprimand him. I can tell you how you still get after him. But can you imagine that scene? But what he's bringing up is his son. He says, by the way, now his son's in college, and every time they go to that full Whole Foods store together, the first thing he does is he moonwalks in front of the Apple display on the way by, and they laugh at it every time. But he's describing the personality type that we're talking about today. That's why I said these are the type of people that are just, they are fun to be around. They're the ones that just make life fun. And in them is the reflection of the image of God that he put them to reflect and to show his joy and his abundance for life. There's a specific superpower that this person has, which is labeled the Enthusiastic Optimist. The specific superpower they have is that power of just positive thinking and the ability to see interesting ideas and all kinds of possibilities almost anywhere in any situation. They're constantly looking like they're living with just a boundless love for life and joy in life. Some describe them like kids that burst into life finding out it's another snow day and they get to hang out. As you hear this, maybe you're thinking of someone going, I know somebody who is like that. They are able to just see the best in people and in situations, and they can bring excitement and life to all the things they do. They're also people that are just creative and innovative, and they're pretty flexible thinkers, actually, because of the gift that they have to see the good in there. They see possibility where everybody thinks there's no chance, there's nothing there. And if you ever get around one for very long and spend time with them and have dinner with them or coffee or whatever, or stand around in the front entrance of the church, you love visiting with them because they are natural storytellers. And by the time they're done, they are going to grab you and they're going to bring you in, and you're just going to want to hear more of their ability to just tell a story, because that's even just their natural talk style that they have. These are the people that some say you just want to invite to the party, not because they're just another fun person at the party. They are the party. We need them. And there are some that God created with just a natural ability to live this way, a natural ability to reflect his joy and his abundance and bring that side of life that we need to have around. If we can't muster it up, they bring it in there. When things are tough, they bring something that makes you go, you know what, there's a reason for hope. There's another day. There's another chance. Maybe a good way to sum up the mindset and the attitude of this optimist person is through the words of the great philosopher Peter Pan, when he says, just think of happy things and your heart will fly on wings. That is the mindset that this type has. And we love to have them around. We need to have them around. We are blessed when we have this group around this type of person in our lives. Just for a moment. You don't have to raise your hand, but can you think of someone like that? I mean, as I go through this, I think of a few people, and I just think, man, I love it when they're around. Most of the time. Because like any other type of person, they're also living in what I just keep calling the Genesis 3 world, with an enemy constantly coming after them, speaking to them, lying to them, trying to get to them, to keep them from reflecting that image of God that they were created to reflect. And they have their struggles too. And some of the things that can make them so wonderful are also what can make them so difficult. But if we will have the ability to dig in and actually look underneath the exterior of this upbeat, energetic, positive thinking human being, we can see that they also struggle with a core fear and a core desire and a core longing and a core weakness. They have this area that the enemy knows if I can get them to believe that, even with this is going to turn it, and they're not going to be able to reflect and make the difference they can make. And the big lie that he speaks to them, the big fear that he tries to get them to buy into, is that they are going to be deprived of something important in life, including experiencing life itself. Because these people are often bigger than life, they struggle with the idea that they may not even get to experience life. And that they're going to be deprived of being able to do what their natural bent is to do. They fear being limited in life. They fear being bored in life. They fear missing out on something fun in life. And on a more deeper emotional level, the real fear is that if they acknowledge their fear, they're going to get trapped in their emotional pain that comes from the fear that these hard experiences in the world bring. And so they're constantly trying to run from that, to fight against that, to go after what they long for and what they desire. And just like all of us, when we do that, we start fighting from the flesh and we find ourselves often getting out of alignment or misaligned with God. And we put up defenses and strategies in battles where we struggle. And when this person gets to this place, they find themselves constantly living in a way that they just want and need to avoid pain. One author says this: the optimist doesn't want to feel unpleasant emotions, particularly the swirl of fear and emptiness they resist at their core. No one enjoys feeling frightened, sad, bored, angry, disappointed, or frustrated, but for this personality, emotions like these are intolerable. So what they'll do is they'll fight back and they'll try to redirect their attention away from these losses and these struggles and these anxieties that haunt them. And as Richard Rohr says, they try to imagine a life where there is no Good Friday and it's Sunday all the time. When we live in that kind of a place, things aren't going to go well. Oftentimes what they'll do is actually go to an imaginary place. They're going to go to a place where life is good, and they're going to check out of reality that's going on. I read of one little boy sharing his story, well, not a little boy, he's a man now, but sharing his story when he was a little boy, and in his family, there was a real struggle between the parents. The dad didn't really acknowledge him. The dad didn't take care of him. That he wasn't physically abusive, but just in any other way, might as well have been abusive. The mom was overbearingly loving for him to try and make up for what the dad wasn't doing. They would fight all the time, and he shared one night, it was just a very unhealthy situation, and they would fight all the time, and one night they got in a big fight. The mom took the boy, put him in a car, they were driving, and he says, I found myself at one point driving, looking at the rain, and all of a sudden I was just imagining myself out in the rain, things being, and he goes to describe with this rain just washing away the problems that I have, and he was just checking out of reality and redirecting these feelings of what was going on to imagine a happier place and a better place. And he says that became the pattern for my life. Anytime something difficult would happen, I would check myself out and I would move to a place that was happier, whether it was real, whether it was not. It might have even been a past experience, but it was a past experience, or I would dream and imagine of a future of something, real or not. And what he was kicking in was this defense mechanism of just idealism, idolization, making a place that would be ideal. And when they're out of alignment or misaligned, that's often what will happen here. And when they're in that place, it's really hard to truly get to know, because they're just always going to be happy, never going to open up, not going to be honest, going to live in an unreality. The other thing that they'll often do is reframe a situation. They'll turn a positive or a negative into a positive, no matter what it is. Instead of actually looking at that negative and identifying it for what it is, they'll always try and put a positive twist to it. And they'll do everything they can. They won't just admit, yes, this isn't good, because, again, the fear of that pain, the fear of what that could limit me to, the fear of what I could get trapped in, I don't want to go there. So you know what? Yes, this is terrible, but I'm going to put a positive twist. I'm just always going to share it's always going to be positive. And if you ask them how they're doing, the answer is always, I'm good. God's great. Things that are true, but they're more saying it to put a positive twist. Or they're always looking for that extra little something in there that you go, okay, that is good. And again, there's so many parts of this that can be so positive that that is good. But when you're just, again, not living in reality, because you're turning anything that's real into something that's not real, just to put a positive twist to it, that doesn't work well. And then before they know it, when it's time to live life, they're doing things that maybe aren't so wise, that maybe aren't so smart. And then they're rationalizing it away because they're reframing it. To me, I have no idea where it actually originated, but all I could keep thinking as I've looked and studied and thought on this is, my guess is that whoever started the phrase that people here that have been here know just drives me nuts, YOLO, was this type of person. Because if you've heard me say before, YOLO usually follows, I did something stupid. But now I'm going to reframe it and rationalize it. Usually I did something, so you know what? I'm going to put a positive twist to it. You only live once. YOLO. That's what this optimistic, enthusiastic, optimistic person will often do. And then through it all, as they're putting up those defense mechanisms, they struggle with their weakness of what they call gluttony. And I don't mean in this case gluttony like eating too much food, even though that can be part of it. Gluttony is a passion that is defined as a desire to consume just as much stimulating and pleasurable experiences as they can. They reframe it. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to pretend it's there. So they say, you know what? I'm just going to go grab as many positive experiences. And it may be food. It may be a drink. It can be sex. It can be relationship. It can be experiences. But they go and they just try and gather it all in just to live life and only feel good and only pleasurable experiences. But what they end up running into is what many of us already know, and what the writer of Ecclesiastes says is that it doesn't work. And then that thing that they most fear at the beginning, that they did all this for, they're right back battling again. So while they're in there energetic, upbeat, and we're happy, we need to be thinking and praying, because they may be struggling and they may be doing this out of a fear and all these things that are going on underneath that we can't see. And we may need to be able to try and find a way to connect and talk to them and love them, to be able to go back and say, what's going on? How are you doing really? I don't remember where I was recently where someone said, the question they like to ask people now is, how are you doing? And then before the person starts to answer, really? How are you doing really? And try and get them to a place where they're willing to go to that pain and that hurt and that thing that they're trying to avoid, and just be honest about where they are now. The truth is, if this person, like any other person, is going to grow and mature in life, they're going to have to deal with the hard and difficult and painful moments that life brings, and not idolize or rationalize them away in order to feel good and stay happy. In fact, I think James was referring to this, but we always just think of external problems. I mean, I think it says anything, but maybe they need to take the advice of James when he says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. We've read this for so long, thinking of the trials that come around us. It can be the trials that are within us that James is talking about as well. James says, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. James is trying to tell them, let go there. Work with it. Live in it. Deal with it. Process it. Let the acorn shell of your life go underground, do what it's going to do, break so you can become the oak tree that you were created to be. Let it go there. It would be wise for someone with this personality to heed this. It's hard because of their bent. It would be wise for all of us to heed this. But look at that. When you face trials of many kinds, know that it's actually testing your faith to produce perseverance so that eventually you can be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Isn't Scripture sometimes just kind of annoying? Because you read this and go, but I don't want to. And we may not even have this personality. I love what Beatrice Chestnut wrote when she says, in trying to avoid pain, by focusing on pleasure, we inevitably create more pain for ourselves. Because when you avoid the bad stuff, it doesn't go away. It just gets swept under the carpet where someone can trip on it later. When we don't deal with problems in the present because we can't bring ourselves to focus on life's difficulties, we are bound to make life more difficult for ourselves when our challenges inevitably mount up and overflow. And then later on, she also asked the question, without experiencing the bad, how can we ever fully appreciate the good? These are some thoughts for someone with this personality to hang on to so that they can get to that place where God can use them as He created them to be. And so as we wrap it up today, this is what I want to share for those that may be sitting here going, that sounds like me. Or for those that know somebody, you go, no, that sounds like them, and I love them, and I want to walk with them. I want to encourage you to start thinking more towards taking steps towards, instead of living in gluttony, to be living more in sobriety. And again, what I don't mean by that is just quit drinking. I mean sobriety in the bigger, deeper sense of the word, where we slow down, we live in the present moment, we exercise self-restraint, we rein in our restless monkey minds, and get down to the business of ordinary life. In order to do that, we have to come from a place where we are hearing, believing, and living in the healing message that God will take care of you. That's what Jesus is saying in John chapter 15. If you read and go back to that moment that he spent with the woman at the well when he stopped to take a break and he stopped to rest, and she came up there while he waited on the disciples and she started talking to him. If you remember, in the midst of that whole thing, he asked for a drink of water. And she goes, well, how are you going to get a drink? You don't have anything to drink out of. And this starts a whole discussion. And eventually he brings up to her, you know what? Anybody who drinks this water is going to get thirsty again. But I can give you something where you will never thirst again. If we keep chasing what life has and are gluttons for all those experiences, we're going to continually be thirsty, what he was telling her. And if you remember that whole thing in there, he talked to her about going back to her husband. He says, I don't have one. He goes, I know you don't because you've had how many? Yeah. Why is that? I mean, let's just be real. Why did she have 5 husbands? Because she was chasing something. She was searching for something. She was looking for whatever the answer was in those relationships. And Jesus was calling that out and going, even in all the men, you're not going to find it. I have the thing that'll keep you from thirsting. And then later, as he's talking to his disciples or the crowd after some other teaching, he doesn't just talk about thirsting. He also says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. The person who struggles with this needs to hear these words, believe these words, live in these words, sit in these words, and actually stop and go, why do I keep chasing for more stuff? Why do I keep trying to grab more experiences? Why do I keep looking for more pleasure? I have access to it right here. And the one that says, I am the vine that you bear fruit from. I am the water that you will never thirst from. I am the bread who will keep you from ever being hungry again. As the worship team comes up to close this, I want to remind you that Jesus reminded people more than once that you only need me. I am the one who ultimately satisfies and will keep you from experiencing all this. The truth is, the joy of the Lord is our strength, not all the stuff. There is a joy in the Lord that is our strength, and we can experience the promise that Jesus gave to us after he said, the thief comes to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. If you're an optimist looking for life and being worried about being limited in life, and that's your fear, is that I'm not going to get to experience life, Jesus is going, yes, you can. The reality is, again, there is a thief that is looking to steal, kill, and destroy. We cannot sweep that aside and live in another reality and idolize another world. That is what is here. Jesus told his disciples, the prince of this world is coming. The prince of this world is here. And like I shared last week, in this world you will have troubles. Here he says the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But then he always follows it up by saying, but. That's reality. But I've overcome the world. That's also reality. And I have come that they may have life to the full. That is also reality. But it will be when you come to me, the one that keeps you from thirsting again, the one that can keep you fed and full. So God's invitation is to invite us to be free from the fear of being limited and cut off from what we think will give us life to the full. To be free from thinking, if I don't get that, I'm not going to get to experience, and instead to just stop and embrace his love and to trust that we're not going to miss out on the abundance that he has to offer in all situations, and to go, it's you. Or in the songs that we've sang this morning, to turn our sorrows over to him because he takes them and can do something amazing with them as we persevere and he matures us. To turn our eyes upon him and to look full into his wonderful face so we can experience the peace that comes from him. That's his invitation. And it's for all of us, but especially if you're the one that was created in his image with that bent towards joy and abundance and the desire to just live life big. Sometimes you're going to have to come back and remember that because the enemy is going to come attacking and try and take you out of alignment with him and look for other avenues to experience what you've been gifted to experience and to reflect on others. So I encourage you, as we walk out of here again into another week, to just be sober this week, to sit in his presence, to remember that he has not left the building, that he is always there, that he loves and that he cares. And if you're like that woman going and tired and exhausted to go to the well for more water, he's sitting right there going, guess what? I've got what you need. Trust me. Come to me. If you're the enthusiastic optimist that we're talking about today, just know we need you. We need you to come to the party. We really need the joy and abundance that you bring to life. We need to laugh. We need to smile. We need to be reminded that there is hope. But also know that you are made to reflect the image of God. And when you are in alignment with him, man, you bring so much. So sit with him when you can kind of feel the fear welling up. Just stop and sit with him and think about the words that he shares. and the truth that's in them, and just the fact that you don't need to go searching for the pleasure that you seek to live life. He's right there. He's sitting on the ledge of the well. He's walking alongside saying, I'm the bread. He is right there saying, just come to me, and you'll experience life to the full. That's my prayer and hope this week for you and all of us that are here. Remember, next week, we won't be here. If you feel that you can and want, go on out to the red line. Give yourself about 30 minutes to get out there. If you've never been out there, it's pavement and it's country road. So just so you know. And just celebrate with a group of people for 125 years in this little town next to Palco, Kansas, out in the country, who have made such a big impact on the world wide that we'll hear. And just celebrate what God's done through them. And then maybe use that to remember that, man, what is he going to do through me? God, I pray as we go that you would just help us to walk out with the understanding of the joy and abundance we can have in you. The life that is truly life. I mean, it just sounds like such a preacher thing to say. Like that's what we're supposed to say, but I'm just repeating you. You literally said, I am the bread of life that will fill you up. I am the water that will keep you from thirsting. I am the one who can fight back against this enemy that is looking to steal your life, to give you life to the full. I am the one that in this world of troubles has overcome. God, help us not to hear me or to hear church or to hear the Bible or to hear all that and just to hear you, Jesus. And to hear you inviting us to hear those words and to soak them in and to let those be what just consumes our mind and our thoughts as we walk out into just what's going on. To know that we have a hope and we have an opportunity to still live life each and every day and to reflect you in the way that you created us in the image of it. So we are salt and we are hope to the world around us. Give us that ability this week as you just remind us of these truths. Thank you again for the opportunity to share them and to hear them and to have this moment to be reminded of them. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.